Hi, and welcome to Finding Your Way Through Therapy. I'm your host, Steve Beeson. The goal of this podcast is to demystify therapy, what can happen in therapy, and the wide array of conversations you can have in therapy. I also talk to guests about therapy, their experience with therapy, and how psychology is present in many places in their lives. I also share personal stories. So please join me on this journey about therapy. Hi, and welcome to episode 77 of Finding Your Way Through Therapy. I am Steve Beeson. If you haven't listened to episode 76 yet, please go back and listen. It's about a chapter in my book. Trauma and PTSD are not the same. I'm going to leave it as let it float here so that you can go and listen to it. But episode 77 will be a review of the whole season. And I really liked my season. I really feel like I had a lot of guests that I were kind of like return guests, a few new guests, and very powerful messages from these new guests. So the first episode was with Pat Rice and Carrie Keegan. We had a great time. We talked about whales and spiritual life and how they can teach us so much more about that. I really hope you go back and listen to it because I think that Pat had a great idea of inviting Carrie. I'm hoping to invite Carrie again, but knowing how Pat works, he already sent me another person that he would like me to bring onto the show, and I'm looking forward to possibly doing that. And I think that when they talked about thoughts are electric and emotions are magnetic, I thought that was a very strong message. So I hope you go back and listen to that. Episode 67 was to look up the spirit of my life. You know, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about that episode 67, 69, 71, 73, and 76 were all reviews of chapters in my book. And between the look up the spirit in your life, I'm real in so many ways, the unique challenges of first responders, a beautiful mind needs to be nurtured, as well as my last one that I reviewed, which was trauma and PTSD are not the same. I really think that you can get a good sense of what my book is about. I can tell you what I want to change about the book. And as I continue working on a specific project on the subject, I really hope you can go back and listen to those. Buy my book, available on all good platforms, including Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. And I hope you find time to go buy a copy, maybe a good Christmas gift. Although I don't know, telling people to go to therapy is a good idea for a Christmas gift, but nonetheless, that might not be the worst thing in the world. Episode 68 was with Stephanie Simpson, who is a returning guest, and then my friend, Courtney Romanowski. Courtney has been a friend of mine for several years. She works out of my office. We knew each other from working in a partial hospital. And what we really talked about the whole time is we talked about the breath that we use and how to come back to the breath on a regular basis. I'm hoping to work on a specific projects with them. And as soon as I can talk about it, it's going to be on my podcast. I really hope to release that sooner rather than later. But we talked about storytelling, the narratives, the mind, body, spirit. They almost got me to dance during the whole thing, but talking about the holistic process of what we do is also very important. And Stephanie and Courtney will probably be back on the show at some point. I really am looking forward to that. Episode 70 was returning guests Jay Ball and Caitlin Dehe. Again, people I've had before on the show. Is always a fun time. We talked about how to teach, how it affects people, the traumas, the peer support. And we really talked about how to help officers to get the support they need and how it can be a challenge, but also very important to think about overall because our first responders do need the support. Episode 72 was with the team of Kara, Bill, and Susan. Kara Terrell, Bill Dwinels, and Susan Rogendorf. We actually had all one thing in common. We worked on a crisis team. And as usual, Bill tried to recruit some of us, but we talked about, the challenges of being on a crisis team, what it meant to us, and how it's a great training ground for what you may want to do as you go into this field. So for therapists, and we give a little tips here and there as to what to expect when you go to the emergency room. And I think that's important to do for a whole lot of people. So I do hope you go listen to that. November 9th was when we did the Veterans Day special edition of our podcast. And the reason why I call it special edition, rarely do I mention the dates here, but it was around Veterans Day, and we had a veteran on, Kyle Purcell. He came in with Jay Ball and Caitlin Deehee. Yeah, they show up twice this season. And we talked about a lot of different things around veterans. And Kyle shares very openly about what he has been through. And I really appreciate that he did that. And finally, the last but not least guest was Lisa Mustard. Lisa's someone that has a podcast called The Therapy Show. I go and get it. I've been listening for 2 years. And me and Lisa just like really felt like we were just like talking about vulnerability, talking about ourselves, and how we want to see the future in regards to therapy, and hopefully how we can help people get the support they can while doing podcasts. Anyway, you need to listen in order to get the feeling of it. So that's the review of season 6. Season 7 will be here in the new year. So I'm doing something new. I'm taking the month of December off, but no worries. There's going to be a quote unquote new episode every single week of December, with most downloaded this season, my favorite episode of this season, the most downloaded episode of the year, and my favorite episode of the year. So please continue to listen. And I truly, truly appreciate, even if you went to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, gave me a 5-star rating, or any type of review is always beneficial. And I hope to hear from you soon. Please like, subscribe, or follow this podcast on your favorite platform. A glowing review is always helpful. And as a reminder, this podcast is for information, educational, and entertainment purposes. If you are struggling with a mental health or substance abuse issue, please reach out to a professional counselor or therapist for consultation.